welcome everybody to another episode of Face the Truth. This is going to be really fun. Before we get into it, I just want to let all the caricature artists out there that are going to ISCA this year that I finally worked it out. I am actually coming, so that's going to be really fun. Can't wait to see you all and spend a week drawing with everybody, drawing and painting. And some cool news. It's not 100%, but I've been talking with Kevin Nealon a lot about this, and it looks like he might come for a couple days to hang out with everybody. He's super into it and excited, so that could be an awesome time. If he does come, try not to like bombard him and be psycho to him, but he's super excited about the art and wants to see what everyone's doing, so it could be an awesome time. So anyways, my guest this week is an awesome artist. He's done everything from writing to drawing and illustrating, and he's prolific. He's painting. I first knew him from just his drawings for the Kill Tony show, but since have looked at his website. He's got some really awesome oil paintings that I totally dig. Awesome, like kind of old school vintage illustration style, which I think is the best. Really cool. We'll talk about that as it goes along. But anyways, without further ado, please welcome the one and only Ryan J. Ebelt. So, hey, welcome, man. Appreciate you doing this. Yeah, we talked briefly. We got to talk briefly after the Kill Tony show about a month or two ago. Yeah. It was nice to talk with you. But yeah, a lot of people I don't know. I think it's really cool what you do for the Kill Tony show. It's like a courtroom artist on steroids, basically. You sit there every Monday night. You get to sit there at the Comedy Store and just kind of come up with whatever you want, right? I mean, kind of just freely. And you don't know. Do you know ahead of time who the guests are going to be, or you kind of just show up and hey, there's Joe Rogan or whoever?
Well, the thing was early on when I first started doing it. And we didn't really have the band. Like, we had Pat Reagan who would open, and he was sort of, he would sit in and comment during the show. But at that time, I was really only doing 4 people. Yeah. So if I didn't know who the guests were, it wasn't necessarily that bad. I could kind of wing it. But now, we can have 2 guests. It's like we have the band, and the band is doing whatever they're doing. And it's like I can be having to draw 7 or 8 people. And now, of course, I also try to include the regulars. Like, I try to get as many, many aspects in there as possible. So I kind of have to block something in. Like, I have to kind of rough something in. So I usually make sure, and now because the show's got bigger, Tony puts up who the guests are typically. And then I usually contact the band and try to get an idea of what they plan on doing that night, so that I can rough something in, because otherwise it's too much. Like, I've had to wing it a couple of times and it's worked out, but I find that I'm happier with whatever it is if I kind of know what everybody's doing.
Yeah. Real quick, maybe we should just explain. I mean, if you want to explain, you explain. You're the one that's doing it. Just exactly what it is that you do there and what the show is. Because I want to talk about before that, but maybe we should let people know so they understand what the heck we're even talking about.
Okay, yeah. So Kill Tony, it is a show where basically open micers, everybody from open micers to seasoned comics, especially seasoned comics from out of town, submit their names and they're put into a bucket. And during the course of the show, they're drawn, their names are drawn, and they get to go up there and do 1 minute of stand-up comedy. And after they're done, the panel does everything from, critique and give notes to just absolutely roasting them.
Yeah. And this is at the Comedy Store, by the way.
Yeah, at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. And it's been going on for about 6 years now. And so basically, and then, we just rotate people in. Like, it can always change. It's like, so, and sometimes it's the same people that get drawn out of the bucket from week to week. It can be a whole different, and it's everything from people who are great stand-ups to absolutely crazy, people off the street who just happen to wander in and put their name on something and ended up on a show.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. And then you sit there and basically illustrate the whole thing. It's usually like an hour and a half or so. So you're like just nonstop, just drawing constantly.
I mean,
it's pretty awesome.
I was explaining to a friend of mine yesterday how what's funny is, at the store, because the store is sort of the home location, I can spread out and I can bring all kinds of gear. I'll get into watercolors and pastels and like all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah. And on the road, of course, I can only take I take a very limited kit, like just a handful of things. A lot of times it's just pen and ink. But what's hilarious is that the road shows are longer. I would have more time to get into stuff because the comedy shows are but I've got all my stuff. So it's like, it's just kind of funny how it works out.
Now, what I'm curious about is how this whole thing got started with you drawing there. Obviously you were an artist way before that, but what was the evolution of, hey, you should come and sit at the show and do drawings for the, thing?
Right. So what ended up happening was I was a regular for a long time at a comic book shop in Culver City, which has since closed down. The owner retired and sold the business. And I got to be friends with a guy named Andrew Fenellis, who's stand-up. He also works on Bill Burr's podcast. And he and I got to be friends because we were both friends with one of the guys that worked there. And some friends of his used to do a show called Palapalooza, which was Steve Randolph, Aaron Maliner, and Bill Posley. And it was a fun show because they would have either a seasoned stand-up or 3 less seasoned stand-ups come in and do 7 minutes of material. And in between those 7 minutes, they would have an improv team come in and do improv sketches based on the comics material. So it was a lot of fun. It was a very inventive show. In fact, a lot of times when I explain it to people, they're like, that should be a bigger deal. And it's like, yeah, it should. It was a lot of fun. And I had never really done live drawing. Friends of mine did it, and I used to go to, different shows of theirs and watch them work and whatever. So this was the first time I ever do it. And the first guest, the first night I go in and do it, was Tony. So after the show, Tony liked what I did, and he was like, oh, you should come check out our show, Kill Tony at the Comedy Store. And I kind of, sure. Yeah. Luckily Tony was busy, and, I was totally unseasoned at that point. And so I just, I kind of, I didn't totally blow it off. I kept it in the back of my mind, but I was like, I'm really not ready. And so I kept doing this improv show for about a month and a half, 2 months, when Brian Redband was the comic on the show. And after the show, he invited me to come do Kill Tony. Yeah. And the guys who worked on the show, they had performed at the Comedy Store. They knew Brian and Tony and whatever. And they basically took me aside and said, look, dude, they've both invited you. It's a much bigger show than ours. You should totally go do it. You should totally go do it. And their show was on Sunday nights. And so the next Monday, I went up there and did my first Kill Tony. And what ended up happening, the best part about that, I have never shown the first drawing because in my confusion / excitement, I've never done this before. I ended up leaving my entire kit at home. So I had my sketchbook and a ballpoint pen, and I did the worst rendition of basically everybody who was there. I still have the drawing, and my plan is maybe one day, if I leave the show or something happens, whatever, it's like, or whatever, that in the final book, I'll scan and show the first terrible drawing that I did for the show.
That's funny. I mean, as artists, we've all been there for sure, many times. But that's awesome, man. It's so cool. It's such a fun opportunity. The show's a great show, and I just think it's so cool. It's like it's like the old school variety shows where you've got you've got your comedians. You've got the genius part about it too is just the band never knowing what they're going to come out as, and then and I'm sure that just gives you so much more to play with as well. like the whole theme and everything. What's the process like for you when you do the Kill Tony show? Like, do you, because you said you now you're starting to slowly kind of block in it. Do you start blocking in before the show starts just because there's going to be, so you kind of come up with a little bit of a theme maybe, but you don't know what the band's going to be though, right?
No, I do. Like I check in with them.
Oh, they let you know ahead of time?
Yeah, and try to find out what they're going to be doing. And because a lot of times that makes it, for certain comics, the guests, I'm familiar with their material, and so sometimes I have an idea of what I'd like to do just based on them. But a lot of times, like if I'm not familiar with them or not as familiar with them, it's good for me to know what the band is going to do because I can kind of build something around them.
Yeah.
Especially since, they stay in, for the most part, they stay in character. And so it tends to kind of add sort of a certain element to the show that I don't know how to put it. Taint sounds like the wrong word, but it kind of colors which direction the show is kind of going in based on whatever they're doing. So yeah, and then I keep a pretty wide visual library, everything from animators and comic books to fine artists to old poster illustration to all kinds of different stuff. And so, like a couple of weeks ago, they did, they were mental patients, the band.
I saw that
one. Yeah, and Tony is a huge Pink Floyd fan. And so I also happen to really love Gerald Scarfe, who was the guy who did all the animation for Pink Floyd and did all the character design for the wall and whatever. So it's like I kind of tried to build something around him, like something sort of in his style, because it all sort of like lined up in that direction. But sometimes it could be just as simple of like, they're coming in, they're football players. So it's like, all right, everybody's doing something sporty. I don't know.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you ever get a chance to, do you get to like snap some references too, just, to help with extra, are you, cause I'm just curious about the whole, you gotta draw. I'm sure you've drawn Tony so many times now that you kind of probably could just draw him doing whatever. But do you ever get to see the band beforehand and just like snap a couple pictures so you have some reference, or do you just kind of just play with it, whatever happens?
So what I do is I have, especially I started doing this because of the road shows, because a lot of times on the road shows, they've sold every seat. So they don't necessarily have a place for me because they want to make money. So I can, when we just did Sacramento a couple of weeks ago, they had me in such a place where I was essentially looking at the guitar player's leg the entire time. So that's all I could. So because of the road shows, I started keeping on my phone a little library of reference photos of Tony and Brian and the band and like and some of the regular people who show up, whatever. So that I would always have something in case I end up in a crappy spot where I can't see them. And the band in particular, because they come out, like even at the regular show, they'll come out in their costumes and they'll come all the way to the front of the stage. And a lot of times, like Joel, the drummer, for instance, I have to kind of get him penciled in real quick or roughed in because he's upstairs behind the panel and behind his drum kit. So if I'm doing anything where you can see any of his body, I'm not going to be able to see him for the rest of the show. Yeah. So it's like I kind of have to rough him in right away. And then Jeremiah, because of where he sits on stage, a lot of times whoever the open micer is who gets up there and does their minute and then sits there for the interview, they're blocking Jeremiah almost the entire time. So it's like Joel and Jeremiah, like I kind of have to have something roughed in. And as soon as they come out, I kind of have to get it as quickly as I can because Joel, I'm not going to be able to see. And Jeremiah, I'm only going to get to see in snatches. So it's like I have to have a rough idea. I have my reference photos. And then, it's catch as catch can over the course of the show.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds, man, they got to get you a better seat, man. You just go like bring like a little throne with you and just like, hey, It just kind of goes right here. You guys are gonna have to sit around me, give me some, come on, man, I'm the artist. Show some respect. No, that's awesome though. And of course, one of the main reasons too, I wanted to help promote, if I can help in any way. You've got like 2 new books that are out, or just a brand new one. You had one before, right? Or I'm not sure if they just both came out, or.
Well, what it is, two years ago, I put out volume 1, where I had done roughly like a little over 100 drawings, plus some other like promotional stuff and whatever. So I put out a volume 1, and now it's been 2 more years, and I put up a volume. I have them here for convenience.
Oh, cool.
I put out a volume 2.
That's awesome.
Which collects, for the people who bought volume 1. But then I also, because we've gotten so many more new fans, and a lot of the new fans were hitting me up about volume 1. I decided, I was like, just hold on. Like I'm going to put something together for you guys. So I made one that's both books in one.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's got volume 1 and volume 2.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome, man. So yeah, I mean, anybody that's into comics and illustration, caricature, anything, these books are a must-have. They're really cool. It's so cool that what an awesome like experience too, to be able. I'm like a huge comedy nerd, and just to hang out in the world famous comedy store. It's the best comedy store or club in the world. Every single Monday with the biggest comedians ever, and then then you got the band who's just amazing and hilarious, Tony who's amazing and hilarious. Just to be able to be in that atmosphere, and just to be able to use your talent to draw and capture it. It's like a time capsule every Monday night. And you also do the posters, which are really cool too. The posters are awesome. Like what I mentioned earlier in the intro thing is, I love your oil painting style, man. It's very cool. You got a very nice, like what I said before, kind of like a vintage illustration type style, like the I can't even think of the guy's name that I was thinking of, but it's so cool, man. Have you heard Phil Hale, the artist? Yeah, there's a little bit. Some of your paint style reminds me of that a little bit too. Just like there's something about that that I don't even know what the right word is for it. Anyways, it's fucking cool. I love it. But what I'm curious about is like, when did you start in the art world? Like, what was your first kind of toe into, like, were you doing illustration early on, or what's basically been the trajectory here, from the early on till now? Tell me it all, Ryan.
I mean, I started drawing pretty early. I mean, in fact, both my grandfathers were actually pretty good at drawing. I mean, they never. My one grandfather, he liked to like sort of oil paint and draw for fun. The other one was more of a draftsman type. It's like, but they both kind of had this scale, and it was about in the 5th grade. Some buddies of mine in elementary school, it's like they were the ones who really got me into sort of regularly reading comic books. And we used to sit in the back of class, of course, and just sit there and draw, primitive bad comic books. And from there, like art, it was always something I did, but I never intended it to become my main thing. Like, it was sort of my thing to unwind. And, when I first moved to LA, I was trying to pursue writing more. And, I ended up I was working production on movies and TV shows. Probably the biggest of which was Team America, which was a lot of fun. But, I was pursuing writing and like my writing gigs. I was writing for advertising. I was doing like some script doctoring and, and stuff like that. And it was sort of funny because I got to be friends with other comic book artists, and I got to meet, a bunch of different people because, of course, in LA, you end up meeting, musicians and actors and comedians and, people who do a little bit of everything. And I just sort of slowly got, like if people needed drawings, like I've done storyboards for people and like stuff. And it just sort of kind of started to veer in that direction. And then when I started, about we're getting close to 5-6 years ago, I started doing that improv show. And ever since then, that's when it's really all been, because I was showing in gallery shows, and friends of mine would curate shows, and I would submit pieces and whatever, and it was a sideline, and and I made some money here and there off of it, but it was never my main gig. And then slowly it's just sort of become the main gig, and now I sort of do writing jobs on the side and stuff.
That's interesting. So when did you go to art school? No. So you just started just getting into drawing. You've just kind of always been drawing and painting and that sort of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, right. I took I took the odd class here and there, and but of course, even a lot of that. Look, I kind of wish I had taken more, because there's certain technical skills I wish I had been taught early on instead of having to figure it out. Like, especially like with oil painting. Yeah. What was it? I can't remember who I want to say it was Delacroix, said, it's like, what is it? The more you learn about painting, the more complicated it gets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much so.
I thought that I said that. Right. I've told people that, like, it's true, man. Like, the more, like, I've been oil painting for like maybe 9-10 years, and painting for about 16 maybe. But like, the more I get into it, the more I do it, the longer it'll take, to finish one, and the more I'm like, oh, I should do this. I should, what I mean? Everything just becomes a little bit more complicated, a little bit more. It's like, it's not that it's more daunting. You know what I mean? Like, I feel better every single time I do it. But yeah, I've noticed that same thing. It's like hard to just do it quickly sometimes.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, the one I laugh about the most, because at least like with oil paint, like, acrylic is sort of the easiest, because if you mess up or you're not happy, you can just go right over it because it's dry in a nanosecond. And of course, oil painting, because it stays wet, as long as you haven't turned it into mud, you can kind of keep working it and pull stuff out and push stuff in.
Yep.
But the funniest one to me which is a love-hate thing, is watercolor. Because what's always funny to me about watercolor is that two groups do watercolor. Little kids and absolute masters.
Yeah.
It's like there's very few people like in the middle who just kind of work in watercolor. It's like, either you're a little kid and you don't care and you just start slapdashing, whatever in, or you are just an absolute master and you know how to just lay stuff in, like in these beautiful washes, and all of a sudden it turns into this and unfortunately, I am in sort of that middle phase. It's like, I know enough to be dangerous, but, I still don't feel like I've because, and to a certain extent, you never can, because the water is just going to do what the water does. It's like you can only control it so far, and it's like it's just going to do what it's going to do.
You know what? I've like, watercolor is one of my favorite mediums, and the one thing, I don't know how much you've messed with it, but like years ago when I discovered, like, I've been painting with watercolor for a long time, but I discovered the Series 7 Winsor & Newton brushes. With other mediums like acrylic and oil, like I'm more picky with oil, what kind of brushes I use, as far as like, what I think works the best. Acrylic, I kind of just use whatever. Acrylic messes up the brushes so fast anyways, but with watercolor, I'm like really kind of snotty about it because I've realized that the Series 7, they're expensive brushes, but like you can literally dip the brush in water and just lift it up and the water won't drip out of it. It just holds in there. And the nice thing about it too is like when you're painting with it, you can get nice washes and everything, but if you get that water out of there, and you can like sculpt and control the paint so well, because all you got to do is like take the tip of that brush and just put it in that paint. And it just like sucks it out. You know what I mean? And and I found that painting with those brushes will help your overall experience with watercolor so much more. I don't know. It depends on the paper you're using as well. But it's funny because the reason I even bring this up is watercolor was kind of my first medium, just because when I started painting, I was afraid. Like, painting seemed so daunting and sort of overwhelming to me, because I had spent all my life drawing with pencils, color pencil, markers, pen and ink. So painting just seemed like that's what adults do, like, and then when I started painting, I went with watercolor because it was transparent and I felt safe. I felt like I could start building with real transparent thin layers, and I could just build and build and build with, it would take a long time, but I could control it completely. And the funny thing is I always hear the opposite from people. They feel like they have no control with watercolor. And I think the reason for me that it seemed to be natural is because I approached it at such a, trying to be so careful. So it was just always very thin. Like some of my first layers, I would put down. I remember, friends of mine seeing, like, watching me. I can't even see anything there. No, trust me, there's a layer there. Like I just was real gentle. Like I would hardly, some people like to just get their darks down right away. No, I build my darks, and then, when I got into more painting, I started getting into acrylic, and same thing. I didn't go opaque with acrylic right away. I went transparent with it, almost used it like watercolor, until I started having enough balls to be like, wait a minute. Okay, I'm starting to get this thing. I can go more opaque. I don't know if you've messed with gouache at all, but I think you might dig that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice like it's almost like a watercolor and oil had a baby together or something,
Yes.
It's awesome.
No, I love gouache. The only thing is it's the one I fight with the most.
Mm.
I don't know why. And, the big part of it is, to me, it's a much more thoughtful, like I really have to kind of think things out, because, gouache to me does not blend well at all on the page.
Mm.
You kind of have to like pre-mix all of your colors and sort of know where you're going, because it doesn't, but it's like, but I love it. Like I love, like you said, because I too like love old illustrators, and now I can't think of the guy's name. There's one guy in particular who was very famous for doing all the women's magazine illustrations, and he did it all in gouache, and it's gorgeous.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of his name. And the book, it was funny. I was trying to there's a big book on him, but it's sold out now. And
is he the guy that also did a lot of like Western type stuff too? Is it?
No. I'll never think of his name. But no. It was primarily, like I said, like women's magazine, like the ads, like the fashion ads and the fashion illustration. Here, let me. But but I love like that matte quality.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the old illustrators used gouache because like today, like I just finished a deadline yesterday. No, Wednesday I finished it. But started Monday morning. So from me, my perspective, I get a magazine cover. I only have 2 days to do the sketches, get everything improved, everything else. And I'm working digital now, which is the same. I use the same techniques when I paint. But, back in the day when these illustrators were working traditionally, gouache was a way that they could get that oil painting look, but they could do it in like half the time. You don't have to worry. But then they would have to ship like overnight these drawings to get photographed. It's so crazy, like when you think about what those guys had to do. But but the one thing about gouache, I don't know if you've ever tried this. It's a lot of fun. Do you know Sean Cheatham? I think he lives in LA, but you should look him up. Sean Cheatham. He is an amazing painter, oil painter. He also, I think he teaches somewhere painting. Just an amazing artist. But years ago, I saw him painting with gouache. Like he shared some drawings and his steps, and I saw him use gouache in a way that I've never seen anyone do it before, and it totally changed my perspective of it. And what it is you kind of block in your painting, like it could be a person or whatever it is, but it's almost looks like paint by numbers, where you're sort of kind of squinting, and you kind of just get your basic values. So you're going to have like a mid-tone, and then you're going to have one area that's a little bit darker and then a little bit lighter, but you only basically have like maybe 3 different value tones. But it's almost like paint by numbers. So like what you were saying, it's like almost like matte block-ins, right? So when you first see it in that stage, you're like, oh, that kind of looks weird. And then what he does is he starts to drip water over it, and the water just makes it all kind of just blend together, and you get like these really awesome watermarks that just make it look beautiful in general. And then after that, you go in and you start painting on top of that, and it's a really fun way to paint, and it's quick. It's really quick. When I ever do it, I'm like, oh, it's surprising how fast I can get something, working. Makes me want to do it right now. Thinking about it, I'm getting all horny for gouache.
No, I totally understand. John Whitcomb, guy's name, by the way.
John Whitcomb.
Yeah, it's Jon Whitcomb. WHITCOMB.
Okay.
Well, no, because a lot of times what I'll do, like you're saying, like when I've done gouache, if it's a pure gouache painting, is I'll, like you said, sort of like block in and then sort of leave a thinner, kind of like use the edge of the brush, like wherever it's going to meet, like lights and darks, and then block in the lights and darks and let that kind of like overlap. And as you get it wet again, the lighter color like mixes with the dark. And so that ends up kind of giving you your seam, where it's modeled between the light and dark. But the one thing I don't, I say gouache is like the one thing that always gets me is, especially once you've built it up and you've got a solid block, that you really have to watch the water, because it's like if you just get a little bit too much water and you hit it with that brush, and all of a sudden you may as well have taken a scraper to it, because it's just like scooped up this big chunk, and then trying to get that to match again, like if you're trying to get it flat, it's like
it's no, man, but that's part of the fun of it though. I love it, man. I don't, unfortunately, like for me, I don't get to do traditional as much as I want to, as much as I love it. But it's, I'm not complaining. I feel lucky to make a living as an artist, but it's one of those things where like I was joking with, I've done a lot of work with Wacom, and they were interviewing me once for this thing, and I was telling them, what you guys got to do is you guys got to come up with a spray or something that kind of, you can every once in a while just kind of mists out of a Cintiq. And it just smells like, you can like almost like essential oils, you can put whatever you want in there, like a color pencil smell, gouache oil smell. Just every once in a while you're working digitally, there's like this mist, like psst, it's like, oh, color pencils, it would just be so awesome. I still think they got to do that, because there's nothing like it. Like, it's like, it comes, it's like every single art form. I think the raw basics of it is what's exciting about it, for me anyways. Like, have you ever worked digitally at all? Like digital type painting?
Yes. And the thing is, like, it's kind of like you're saying, it keeps getting better, and I enjoy it more and more. And, and I've never been one of the people to like automatically like, meh, digital.
Yeah.
But I was, like one of the big ones was like pen and ink. And even though like people have sent me brushes and stuff to use to try and like it's like, it's still like, and I know a lot of it's just psychological. It's like, but it just looks like digital to me. Like I can tell it's like, this is the same stroke, same size over and over and over again. Whereas the painting, like one good friend of mine, he's an excellent traditional painter. He is an excellent digital painter, and he's gotten his stuff to the point where I can't tell the difference.
Yeah. Yep.
I can't tell which one he's doing anymore. And that is the one thing I found with a lot of digital, is that the people who work in digital that I tend to like the best either do both or were at least well trained traditional, and they bring that into the digital. Like it's just kind of a different way of thinking and processing it, that it ends up like it comes out looking better. It comes out looking,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's a new app that Adobe has put out for the iPad, and it's really right now I just use the iPad mostly for sketches or for fun. I haven't done any like real serious things on it yet. again, because I just haven't had time to like just play on it. But
Right.
Adobe came up with this thing called it's called Adobe Fresco, and it's really cool. Like they have, it's the closest thing I've ever seen digitally to feeling as natural as possible to anything traditional. Where like they've got pen and ink brushes in there where like if you like kind of push too hard in one way, sometimes it'll splatter. It's crazy. They got like oil brushes that stay wet, so like they're like almost like on some kind of digital timer. So like while you're working, you come back to the one area, it's still wet, and you can work into it and do like what you could, and then later it actually dries, and then it's not as workable. You have to do things on top. They've got watercolor brushes where it actually bleeds into one another, and it's like it works. You can like drip water into it, and it's really interesting how far they've gone with it, because I've seen a lot of those things before where it looks absolutely cheesy, and it's just like, oh, just do the real thing. But the cool thing about what they're doing with this program is that if you actually have, they actually have real artists that work traditionally, like developing these brushes. So like if you have any skill in the traditional medium, then when you go to work on this thing, you're gonna just be like, oh, like it's really cool, man. It's like I've been having a lot of fun. Just like I'll sit in a living room, just goofing around on it. Like, oh, look what this look what this brush does, and I'm not even like drawing anything. I'm just like playing with the brush strokes, and it's like this is crazy because it's definitely come a long way. And I'm like, what you're saying is like, I'm not a big fan of digital art that just looks so digital. I prefer, like I want my paintings to just be paintings. It doesn't matter what medium it is. And like early on when I first started in this, it was so stressed out. I was so stressed out. I was just doing deadlines with acrylics and just losing my mind because it was just so stressful, like having to pull all-nighters and then be like, they're not paying me enough for this, man. This is like killing me. And a buddy of mine, like this is probably like at least 10 years or so ago, was like, you gotta try painting digitally. And I was just like, that's cheating. That's stupid. Like that's not painting. And I just fought it for a while. And then eventually I got this like really crappy little, like small little tablet. And I did my first job on it, which was kind of stupid because I already got hired by a magazine to illustrate something. And then I was like, I'm just going to try it digitally, even though I'd never done it before. But it turned out really cool. And I was like, oh, wow, you actually can paint with this. And I realized that all the digital stuff that I hated is because those guys they're not traditional artists. They just everything was super slick and smooth and all that. And so I was able to like figure out real quick, like, oh wow, you can do brush strokes and so it's helped me as an artist just because my deadlines are so crazy. But it's great, right? It's great now, an artist like you, 2019, that's still doing, the traditional, especially what you're doing with Kill Tony. It's so cool because you got to be there right in the moment. And it's spontaneous, it's a lot of fun, man. That's why I really wanted to have you on here too, just because it's so unique what you're doing. Like there's nobody out there doing, I think, what you're doing really. I mean, you said there was like the improv show that out there, but this is such a unique, awesome, fun opportunity. And I'm hoping people will just like get your books and dig into it because there's so much fun stuff. Like when we were hanging out at the Comedy Store, you were showing me like just a bunch. I think it was the second book that you had with you, like a mock copy. It's crazy how prolific, like how many years have you been doing it? You've been doing it for the whole time?
Not the whole time. I started in like it was like 105, I think was the first episode I did, and now we're up to a little over 400. So it's been I've been doing it for almost 4.5 years now. Wow.
That's crazy. Have you ever had so afterwards and there's anyone from like obviously we brought it up, Joe Rogan has been on, a bunch of huge every big comedian has been on the show basically. Has there ever been like a person that's looked at the drawing and been like what the hell, or is it mostly just positive, like that's pretty freaking cool?
I I don't know if I wronged her in another life, but Tiffany Haddish.
I had a feeling you were going to say Tiffany. I don't know why.
Like it hasn't mattered what I've done or how I've done it. And I don't know what it is. I don't take it personally, but she out of all of them is the one person who has almost consistently not had anything good to say about it.
That's funny. Well, what did she say?
Like on I think the first one I did, she was facing in such a way when she came on the show late. So I was just trying to get her in there real quick and whatever. And so I missed, like the birthmark on the one side of her face. And so she immediately said, where's that at? And then, one, I think I was accused of making her look like a white lady.
Oh my gosh.
I think the last one I did was the only one where she looked at it and was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I was like, oh, thank God, finally.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, although conversely, it's sort of funny. One of the best ones I ever had was early on when I first started doing the show. Doug Benson was on, and he brought Sarah Silverman.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I think she may have done it one or two times before I started, but it was a big deal, and I knew she was coming to the show, so like I took extra time. I was like very, very careful about it, and like I had met Doug before. And then after the show, one of the nicest things was Doug kind of, says, hey, man. And he's like, you did a really good job with Sarah. She hates when people draw her because they always make her horsey looking. So,
I wonder why.
he's like, but you did a really great job with it. Because it was funny because, I don't remember because a lot of the comics early on would have asked, what's this guy doing there? And, and so I could kind of tell when she knew what I was doing. She spent a lot of the show kind of looking away, like looking any direction but mine. Yeah, basically. So I was like, I got to get this in and get it. Although in a similar vein, one of the funniest ones, the first time, actually, you mentioned Joe Rogan. One of the first times Joe was on the show, he got there late, and Ian Edwards was the other guest. And for anybody who doesn't know, Ian Edwards is a black comedian. Joe gets there. He looks over at me and asks, what is this guy doing? Like, what's this all about? And Tony explains to him, he draws us like during the show. And of course, Joe looks at me and goes, oh, could you make me black? Which I'm immediately thinking, okay, he's got Ian sitting right next to him. It's like, how far can I go with this before I end up accused of a hate crime? So yeah, I basically gave him a, sort of a Muhammad Ali era sort of afro, like going. I was like, well, because I'd done a whole boxing theme thing, like, since Joe was going to be there, and I was like, and of course the internet took to call him what was it, Fro Rogan. I personally was more of a fan of Joe Frogan, but
Fro Rogan is pretty good. That's hilarious. That's fun. So has there ever been times where I would imagine like sometimes it might be stressful, like you're trying to get it done because do you ever work on it more later, or is it when it's done? Like, because that would drive me nuts a little bit.
No, there's only been one that I was there's only really been one that I was absolutely like, I don't want to show this. This isn't anywhere near done. This is horrible. But there's been a number of them where afterwards it's like, no, this, like, I got to fix that, and the likeness is way off. Like, that doesn't look anything like them. And then there's been other ones where just for fun, just because I liked it and I knew it would look better, like if it was just a black and white, like a pen and ink drawing, I would go back and color it digitally, just because I knew it's like if I put some color on this, it's going to make it pop a lot more. It's going to make it look better. So there's been a number of them I've worked and reworked, later on. And of course, especially if I'm doing anything wet, because I'm working so fast, of course I ran my hand through the middle of it and left smears and stains and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I had to go in and try and clean that up or take it out altogether, or a lot of clone stamping in Photoshop to cover that kind of stuff up.
That's funny. And when I was there, I was at the far left. I wasn't sitting with the comics, so I was sitting like towards the middle with some friends of mine. But it seemed like where you were sitting, like well, just in general, the lighting's not that great in there. Like, do you have like enough? I mean, it seems like, is that even a challenge, or is it kind of like enough lighting that you can work it out? But it seems like a little bit crazy, just everything that's going on. To expect a masterpiece every time has to be overwhelming.
No, like I've gotten used to. The only thing is, our sound engineer, who I love to death, he sort of added even another component to the show where, because we're in the main room, and the main room, is sort of the main room for all the big shows at the Comedy Store. They've got lighting, right? They've got show lighting, and he started using that, started bringing it into this show. And so he's got ones where for certain things, like the light I have is usually fine, but where he turns the lights off. Yeah. So for both the road shows and for that, I always usually keep like a little the clip-on lamp, and or I'll just use my phone, and I'll just because it's I got to keep working. I don't know how long the lights are going to be out, so it's I'll just switch those on and just sit there and under little tiny light. The only bad one I ever really have is sometimes with the road shows, where they'll leave a light on for me, but it's one of those ones where it's in just that perfect position where it's casting the shadow across my hand. So even though I have a light, I still can't see what I'm doing. So I still have to get the little mini light out to get my own shadow out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. So yeah, light. But for the first couple of shows, we were upstairs in the belly room, which is a small, dark room. And I didn't even think about it initially. So for the first 4 or 5 drawings, I had no light at all. Yeah. And so I was kind of having to tip my page in such a way so I could get some of the light from the stage so I could see what I was doing. That's awesome. That's crazy, man. I finally thought to ask, is it possible for me to get a light of some sort? And our producer at the time was like, yeah, I'll find you something. So he found me a little clip-on desk lamp, and it's
and a chair. I need a chair and a light. It's nice to bring me along, but I require food as well. That's awesome, man. How's the traveling been with everybody? Because I know the show's blowing up. It's all over the place now. Yeah, and that's the thing. For the first couple of years, I would meet people or friends of mine who found the show or whatever, either because I was on it or they were already watching it when I got on it. And I always told them, I'm you have to come to the Comedy Store. It's a totally different experience to see it in person and to see it all going on. And that's true. But then for the first time, when I did a road show, because that's always the problem with LA. It's everybody out here is so jaded, and then nothing's fun or special. And like I said earlier, because you get to know, musicians and comics and actors, it's you get invited to all this stuff all over town all the time. And so everybody's kind of got this, blasé attitude about it. Yeah. So when the first time, I think it was Texas, I went because most of my family's in Texas, so it's worked out a few times where I've gone back to visit family, and then I'll drive to wherever the guys are and do the show. And you go to the road shows, and it's people are so excited that you're there, and they've been waiting for you to show up, and and people drive in. One of the Texas shows, these people drove 8 hours from Arkansas just because they knew it's they're never going to play Arkansas. Yeah. It's we got, they have the caravan down there. It ended up that 4 of them, I think, got picked to be on the show. So, they were over the moon. And yeah, just the response when you do the road shows,
people are just, like, they're just thrilled.
Yeah.
And then afterwards it's like, we do the meet and greet, and like, I usually, sell my posters and whatever. And it's like, there's just this huge line of like just people waiting, like, take pictures with us and get us to sign everything. And, and that's really where, since I'm not a performer, the other guys, since they're on the show, people send them clips, of them doing certain things, and, they've got all this stuff to repost. But since, I don't perform per se on the show, I don't get that. So it's nice when I get to go to a lot of these things, because that's really where, like, I end up meeting the people who are like, dude, I really, like, I love that you're a part of the show, and I love that you do this stuff. And, I really enjoy all the work, and, I've got this print and that poster and whatever. It's like, and that's really like where I get to interact the most, like, with the people who like my aspect of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
All the fans, are typically super cool to me, but like, I kind of have my little, like, niche. Like, there's a certain portion of the fan base that's really into what I do. Like, I have a couple of, sort of collectors who, every print and poster and book and everything that I put up, it's like they bought them. Like, anytime anything new comes up, their name comes up, they want one. And that's one of the most, like, sort of rewarding things for me. It's like, these guys are huge fans, and they really love what I do.
Oh yeah, that's the best, man. That's best when you do work, and, like, it's one thing to do work and make a living getting, to illustrate things or whatever, but when you've got fans that appreciate it, that, because they actually really appreciate it, I was just talking to my wife today how, like, it's funny how many different magazines or whatever companies that I've illustrated for, the process of working on it, they, you hardly hear back anything except for, hey, okay, it's looking good, but could you just maybe change this or listing or whatever? And you're just working back and forth until you get it done. You send it away. You've just literally worked your ass off on this thing. You're proud of it. You work so hard, and then you don't hear anything back. You don't hear, hey, great job, great working with you, whatever. And I was just bringing this up today because there's this publication that I work with a lot called the Washington Examiner, and they're very political, and they're, like, more right wing, and so some people give me grief for working with them. I could give a crap. I'm not very political. I think both sides suck, but the thing that's nice about these people is every single time, like, they have no idea how nice it is when I hand it in, and they're just like, man, this is awesome. This is so great. This is one of the funniest covers we've ever seen. Or just a nice little comment. Like, the editor today commented, I shared my art today, and he commented, and he comments basically on Instagram, the editor of a magazine. That's no editors do that. You know what I mean? So, but just that little thing of, hey, this is one of my favorite covers. It's so great. Whatever. It's like, man, that makes me feel so good. Because people sometimes they just take it for granted, like, you're the guy that just draws stuff and whatever, you don't have feelings. You're just that art guy. You don't need a chair.
Yeah. Well, and, like, I get that sometimes with, like, one of our regulars on the show, William Montgomery. It's very true. Tony says this all the time, that it's like people either absolutely love him or they can't stand him, for whatever reason. And I did, he and I were talking. What it was is a bunch of different people were submitting fan drawings to him. And so he would always give me a hard time because I try to include him in the drawings during the show when I can, but I don't always get him in there. And so he likes to give me a hard time when I can't get him in there. And so then I noticed all these fans of his were doing drawings of him and submitting them to him on Instagram. And so, it was my one chance to jokingly, like, rib him back and go, like, oh, you stepping out on me, huh? Like, you got all these other people working for you. And all his fans started hitting me up going like, oh, well, why don't you do one? Like, why don't you do one? And so I said, all right. And so I did this drawing of him, and people absolutely loved it. And so I was like, oh, William, you want to turn this into a print? Like, we'll make a limited edition print and we'll sell some of them. And we did. And it was funny because I would post it, like every couple of weeks, like put it up like, hey, there's only a couple left. Like if you want one. And I kept getting these, like, just really awful comments on him by the people who don't like him on the show. Oh. And, it's kind of one where it's like, well, A, it's like that doesn't have anything to do with me. And B, it's like, has it ever crossed your mind that, maybe I'm friends with the guy? Like I hang out with him, like I know him. Like, so why are you telling me these horrible things? It's like, all right, you don't like him. Like I get that. But what does that have to do with me and what I'm doing? Yeah. Like, so.
Yeah, that's the part of the culture right now with like Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Some people are just dicks, Yeah. It's like, and here's the thing, like my whole thing, because I get it, the whole thing about William, because I watch the show every week. I love it. It's fun. I look forward to it. It's something that keeps me entertained while I'm working. Sure. And I always look forward to when William comes on and David Lucas now, and especially now with David Lucas, it's like you can see that they're both kind of putting a fire under each other's asses, and they're trying to bring it a little bit more, which is way more entertaining. But like I get the love-hate thing for William just because he's got a very unique, different approach. But what I like about what he's doing is that he doesn't give a fuck. But here's the thing. He's a person. He's a person who's an artist who's experimenting. He's trying. Give him a break. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can tell that he cares about, he's trying something different. He's pushing it. And people that don't get it, they can just jump off a bridge or something. Like it's just ridiculous. I have a lot of respect for what comedians do. It's not easy, man. It's hard to, especially every week they got to try to come up with a new minute. And then people are like, oh, all he does is basically do the same thing every week. He just kind of says the same things and does the same things. It's like, not really. You got to pay attention to what he's doing. It's hilarious. So yeah, I think it's great
because he's got kind of a I can sort of see where they're coming from in a sense, but it's like, no, he's sort of building this world, and there's this got this world around himself that he can draw on, and that's part of where even doing the drawing of him that I did, it's like I had a lot of because William in and of himself, like he is a character to look at, but there was a lot of sort of character that I could put in this drawing I did of him. Because there's a lot going on in
oh yeah, makes it more interesting for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So as you know, I told you we got some fan art, so I wanted to show you some fan art. Okay. And they come from all over the world, which is really fun. So let's take a look here. I'm going to share a screen with you, and tell me if you see this. You see the first one?
Yeah.
And I'll send you copies of these, by the way.
Okay. It reminds me of. It's weird. I was just talking. Did you ever see Spitting Image?
Yeah. The British puppets and stuff.
Puppet show.
Yeah.
Because I was just talking about that with somebody. That's.
Yeah. By the way, this is by Ray Shipman.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, man, Spitting Image was awesome, man. Like, early on when I was just starting in caricature, I remember having a book that had like the Reagan and Nancy puppets. Yeah, they were just so brilliant, man. So good.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had like a little of Reagan like hand puppet from the show that was awesome, until he eventually he fell apart on me.
Oh my gosh. This one is by Dominic Zeilinger, who is from Austria.
Nice.
You probably could paint with your hair,
I have considered it, like to try to see what it would do as far as brushes went. Like, would it be like a camel hair, or a badger?
You ever see that artist that paints with his dick and his ass? You ever see that?
Picasso, I believe he's called.
Yeah, I think that is what it is. Picasso. That's so good. Yeah, a buddy of mine years ago sent me that, and I was like, what the heck is this? He's like, dude, you just got to watch it. It's funny. Yeah, he paints with his dick and his ass. Pretty clever. This one is by Michael Crotty.
Wow.
Everyone, I think, likes that one photo you took.
I was about to say, apparently that's got to be my new headshot. A lot of mileage out of that one.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
But of course, this would be the next stage. I've sort of joked about that, like if I could actually bring an easel into the show and, and go to town on it.
That would be fun. This one is by Greg Eagle. Greg Eagle. I like. There's something about the mouth that's very Homer Simpson-ish to me. Yeah. I like that. Like it's got that round kind of dirty, scruffy. That's pretty funny.
Well, he's definitely captured how I often feel like as I know the show is winding down. It's the well, it is what it is. Yeah.
Take it or leave it. Mm-hmm. This is cool. I like the style of this. This is by Laurent Grasat. Some cool, like, again, this is a good example of what I'm talking about with digital stuff, where it has like a nice, even though it's digital, there's a nice, unique thumbprint of this artist, like the style, the brushwork, and everything. Where it's got a life of its own. It feels like art, you know.
Yeah,
I like that.
Because what's interesting is, like, for digital, it's one that actually looks like somebody, really got their fingers into it.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. By the way, that is another fun thing about painting on an iPad is you can paint with your finger on it too. So you can use the stylus and you can get it with your finger. I don't know. I love it, dude. It's fun. It's my new toy. This is by Liberto Clement. And nice. I think this was actually with real pencil on paper.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, pencil by Wacom.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like good pencil is something like I've always admired because I've never gotten out of a pencil. I'll try every once in a while, but it's like I can never get anything out of it that looks like what I want. Like that's why I was into ink from an early age, just because it's like I like the solidity and I like that it made you, like, forced you to make choices and go from there. It's like but people who can do and render and pencil well, like I love it to death.
Yeah. No, I mean there's so many. That's one thing I love about my favorite thing about Instagram over any of the other apps is how many artists are on there that are just, there's so many amazing artists now. It's awesome. I don't know. It's every single day something else will pop up. I'm like, whoa, who the heck is that? Just crazy stuff. It's just awesome, man. Here's a good one. This Stone Tony. This is by Ryan Biddle. That's funny.
Getting primitive with it.
Yeah. Tony. Stone the Golden Pony. Yeah. That's funny. This one is by Jason. I think this is the last one. This is by Jason Williams. It's pretty cool. He actually sent this a couple days ago and then updated it and sent it back. So, yeah, took it real seriously. No, it turned out cool though. It's nice.
Yeah, for sure.
That's pretty cool.
Working, that, because even in my own stuff, there's so much expressiveness you can get just out of somebody's forehead. And yet walking that thin line between, making them look like they're from the movie Scanners and their heads are about to explode versus just a little that thin line between bringing out the lines or the veins or whatever else, making them look like they're about to turn into the Incredible Hulk.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is really nice work on the forehead there. It's cool. Cool. All right, so let's I'm going to try to flip this back. Tell me if you see. Am I back?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we're towards the end here, and there's one last thing I got to do before we go, and it's the most serious thing about my podcast. It's very serious. I take it very serious. A lot of people take it very serious. Hopefully you take it very serious, because this is a very serious thing, and this is Serious Questions with Jason Seiler.
All right.
Now, my question for you, every single question I've asked has been original and new, but this one I have asked my dad, because I had my dad on. He's an artist, and I asked him, and he didn't take it very seriously. But I have to try to ask this question again in my serious tone, my serious voice. And Ryan, what is art? It's my favorite question for artists, because I don't know what it is either.
No, because and this doesn't really answer your question, but it's one of the things that always sort of fascinated me as I, like looking back and looking at the history and how, early on art, like the early stuff is almost all religious. Right. In one way or another, it's like it either ties into religion or history. It's commemorating something that happened. It was an event. Like most of the Greek and Roman stuff, it's either, of a religious nature, or we just had a battle, and this was the guy who won, whatever.
Yeah.
But the one that always fascinated me the most is then, like, once you get in, and then of course, it turns into Christian art and whatever. But as you get into sort of the Renaissance and post-Renaissance, the thing that always fascinated me the most is how those artists were largely considered like part of the construction team, right? It's like you've just finished this house, you've built all this beautiful stuff, and these were the guys who came in and did the murals and the frescoes and the statues. Like they were the finishing team, and it's like in many part because they were just considered part of the construction, they didn't sign it. Like you look in the books and it's like attributed. Yeah. Because this guy was working in that town at that time. It looks like his stuff. It was probably him. And how it took it almost until like what, the 1700s, like 1800s, before it starts to kind of become its own thing and separate, and that it's not just sort of like purely decorative and part of the. I mean, I guess to some extent, I really don't have a good answer for it. It's sort of the expression of the spirit. I don't know.
I always just think it's a hilarious question, just because I find like it's interesting because like in the art world, people are very strange. They're very strange to artists. Initially, if someone finds out that that you're an artist, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, right. And then maybe they see your work, and then maybe they see what kind of work you've done work for, and then they're like, oh, he is an artist. Like for example, when I first met my wife's dad, I was super nervous because, he's like this business guy, whatever, and I'm covered in tattoos. I was going through divorce, had 2 daughters. I'm like, this guy is going to hate me, and then I'm like, oh, I'm an artist. I was super like nervous about that, and because I just assumed he'd be like, oh, this guy's a loser. He's an artist. But then it's like once they find out certain things that you've done, then that that they find worth in it, right? Then, oh no, he's an artist. You don't understand. He's done this and whatever, blah blah blah. But my point is that I love the question of what is art, because every single place that I find it interesting in our world that we sometimes artists aren't given the respect or put where they should be. And that's one of the main reasons I do this podcast, is because this podcast is a celebration of all art, and the people behind it. every single thing that you look at on this planet, an artist created it, basically. Everything from the freaking recorder that I'm using right now, someone designed the way it looks, to the screen, to the lamp that's next to me, to the car outside, to the design of this mouse on my computer. Every single thing was designed by an artist. Your glasses were designed by an artist. Someone shaped those and sculpted those. Everything. We can't get away from it. Everywhere we look. And you know, every single thing we see in a store, like the advertisements, everything. It's all so. You know, the whole thing is art is subjective and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it is, but I just find it such a loaded thing. You know, like what art is, that it always gives a unique answer, and I like that, because I like the direction that you're going with that, because like you're going back to like the time where when art wasn't really art, it was, you know, like for example, like Michelangelo, he didn't want to paint the Sistine Chapel. He was forced to paint the Sistine Chapel. You know, he could give a fuck about it. He tried to get out of it, but we look at that and we're like, that's a beautiful piece of art. And you know, if you know anything about the history, you can also look at it and go, man, that poor guy was tortured to have to paint that thing, and he wasn't even a painter. And it's one of the most famous paintings in the world. And so art is just everywhere, everything, I think, you know. And I feel like those of us who can actually do it and even like do it for a living, I think is one of the most amazing things ever. Like whether it's being a comedian, doing what you're doing, sculpting, painting, I feel like I'm part of an elite group. You know, yeah, I am an artist, bitch. You know what I mean? Anyways, that was Serious Questions with Jason Seiler. It's very serious. So yeah, before we get going here, man, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. This is so much fun. It's so much fun talking with you, man. You're a fun dude to talk about. And I love your work. I love what you do. And I want everybody that's listening to this to check out his work. Go to his website, which is just ryanjebelt.com. He's got tons of awesome work. Also, buy his books. I think you can order through the site probably as well. Right? Yeah. So definitely do that.
If you want signed ones, you can order them through me, and then otherwise, or if you're not in the U.S., it's available all over on Amazon.
Yeah, and you got posters and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
T-shirts and stuff. So yeah, everyone go support Ryan. Anything else before we go that you want to try to promote or anything? Anything else?
With the holidays approaching, it's I can't even think anymore much. So.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I'm and like I said in the beginning, like have you ever heard of ISCA? It's International Society of Caricature Artists.
Yes.
So
yes.
It's really cool. Last time I went was 2015. I've only been to a handful of times. This is the first time. Like I never usually go because it's this time of year is really busy, and I've got a family, so it's like really hard to get away. But my wife and 2-year-old are going to come with me this time. But this year it's in Memphis. But it's really fun because basically what it is, it's funny when people think about it. It's a caricature convention. It's not what you think. It's the world's greatest caricature artists from all over the world, like Japan, Norway, UK, Austria. I mean, everywhere, Africa, all over the place. United States, of course, and every year it's in a different place in the United States. I think they go East Coast, West Coast, back and forth. I think that's what they do. Okay. And it's a week where every artist gets a wall space in a huge convention center, and you just basically spend the week drawing and painting each other in any style you can think of. It's amazing. And then there's like all these different competitions throughout it. There's some speakers that come. And then at the very end, there's basically, it's almost like an Oscars ceremony where there's like a nice fancy dinner. They have like an auction and all this kind of stuff. And then they have like an award show where they do, most exaggerated, best likeness, best use of color, whatever. And it's like a lot of fun. And it's basically a bunch of artists just stroking each other off and having a good time. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a fun way. And it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, caricature, isn't that just like goofy theme park things? It's like, well, yeah, but all the theme park artists that I know are freaking insanely good. They're not what you think. And these guys come and they bring their game, and it's a lot of fun, man. It's really cool. So anyway, that's coming up. I'm going to be doing that. Next week we're driving down. Oh wait, yeah, next Sunday is when I leave, I think. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So sometime I think next year it'll be on the West Coast. So I think you would dig it, man. It's really cool. So anyway,
speaking of conventions, that is one. Like I said, I'm so addled. A good friend of mine, Carmen Acosta, curates. She's been doing shows with Designer Con, which it's called Designer Con, but it's a big convention of all kinds of different artists from all different walks, and they do this huge convention. It used to be in Pasadena. I believe it's moved down to Anaheim out here, and she's curating a show that I'll have a piece in, and the theme is it's all based around the voice acting work of Mark Hamill.
Oh wow, that's hilarious.
I knew, obviously I knew he did the Joker for Batman, was very popular in that, but I didn't realize until I looked into it that, he's been doing it basically since Star Wars came out and has done tons of stuff. What was it? The Adult Swim regular show. Just 40 different characters on that show.
Oh, wow.
That show alone. And tons of in addition to the Joker, tons of different stuff for different Marvel and DC shows. And anyway, I got to have a lot of fun with that, and I got to drop that piece off this weekend. And I think Designer Con is at the end of the month, and I know they've been talking, trying to see if they can get Mark to come out and see the show. So,
oh, that would be cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Sweet, man. Yeah, that would be really cool to see that. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again so much for doing this. It was a real pleasure having you on. I'm a huge fan of the Kill Tony show, and I love seeing what you do with the work, and look forward to seeing what's going to happen in the next few years. I think it's going to – if you have a chance next time they come to Chicago, if you have a chance, we'll have to hang out, get together, and do some drawing or have a beer or whatever. So
for sure. And thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, no problem, man. We'll talk soon.
All right.